Think everyone in America loves Trump? Think again. What if entire states are practically allergic to him? We're talking about places where his rallies get booed, his name sparks protests, and his policies are burned in effigy. Why do millions of Americans despise him with a passion? Is it about race, power, lies, or something even deeper? From liberal strongholds to unexpected battlegrounds, these states didn't just vote blue, they made it personal. You won't believe how far some places have gone just to reject him. Buckle up, because these are the 5 U.S. states that hate Trump, and they're not staying quiet. It's the state where dreams are made, unless you're Donald Trump. Imagine a place where his every move is met with loud boos, protests, and calls for impeachment. A state that's not just opposing him, it's pushing him out. California is the land of progressives, and you know what? It's also the state with the most vocal resistance to his leadership. From Silicon Valley's tech giants to Hollywood's outspoken stars, Trump hasn't exactly had a warm welcome here. You'd be shocked to hear how much of a divide exists between California's values and his presidency. You might think the Golden State would be divided, but nope, it's clear. We're all in on rejecting him. The state hasn't voted red in a presidential election since 1988, and with Trump's policies on immigration, climate change, and health care, the divide only deepens. Imagine being from the state where Trump's entire legacy began, and having your own people constantly turn their back on you. New York is where the man built his empire. Yet, we can't stand him now. The moment he stepped into the political arena, it was a full-on battle with the city he once called home. From the skyscrapers of Manhattan to the streets of Brooklyn, Trump's rhetoric doesn't sit well here. But here's a wild twist. You'd think the state that gave birth to him would rally behind him. But nope, New York has been steadfast in rejecting his politics. In fact, it's one of the most overwhelmingly blue states in the Union. With every scandal and tweet, his image in New York only worsens. And with Trump's attack on New York's sanctuary city policies, it's no wonder he's been booed at his own events. Don't forget to subscribe. We're about to hit states you won't believe are on this list. What happens when a state known for its progressive values and intellectual pride rejects the very person who's supposed to lead the nation? You're about to find out. Massachusetts has made it crystal clear. Donald Trump is not welcome here. You'd be shocked at how hard they've pushed back against his policies. The state, historically a stronghold of Democratic power, voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden in 2020, and the numbers were staggering. In fact, Massachusetts is one of the most liberal states in the country, with the majority of its voters supporting policies that directly clash with Trump's agenda. But here's the kicker. Despite Trump's ties to business, Massachusetts, home to some of the country's biggest universities and research institutions, just can't get behind him. You might wonder, how does the state that gave the world Harvard and MIT feel about Trump's attacks on science and education? Let's just say they don't appreciate it.
From the start, Trump's policies on healthcare, climate change, and his constant undermining of scientific expertise put him at odds with Massachusetts. But guess what? It wasn't just the coastal elites or university professors who opposed him. Regular folks in towns across the state felt it too.
Massachusetts voters didn't just reject Trump's policies, they flat-out rejected his divisive rhetoric. From tax cuts for the wealthy to rolling back environmental protections, the Bay State's residents were furious. And here's something that might surprise you. Massachusetts was one of the first states to introduce its own healthcare system, the same one Trump tried to dismantle on a national scale. You'd think a businessman like Trump would be celebrated in a state full of Ivy League grads and entrepreneurs. But instead, it was clear his vision for America didn't match what they wanted for the future. What does this mean for Trump's support? Well, if Massachusetts is any indication, it's safe to say his approval rating here will likely stay low for the foreseeable future. Want to hear more about a state that has its own take on Trump's agenda? Stick around, we're moving on to Vermont. Vermont. How does a state that prides itself on independence and liberal ideals deal with a president who's everything they stand against? Vermont has been at the forefront of resistance against Donald Trump. You'd be shocked to know that even though Vermont is small, it packs a punch when it comes to politics. The state, with its population just shy of 700,000, has had a turbulent relationship with Trump's presidency, and the results speak for themselves. Bernie Sanders, the state's most famous senator, became the face of the resistance to Trump, and his supporters have been loud in their opposition. But it's not just Sanders. Vermont has made its disdain for Trump clear through consistent voting patterns and public sentiment. In the 2020 election, Vermont went overwhelmingly blue, with 66% voting for Biden. And in 2016, Vermont also chose Hillary Clinton by a large margin. You might wonder why a state that's often seen as rural and full of farmers would reject Trump so strongly. But here's the shocking part. Vermont isn't just a blue state, it's a state with strong principles. The state's rejection of Trump is rooted in its dedication to progressive values, particularly its commitment to social justice, healthcare for all, and environmental protection. And guess what? Trump's attacks on those very issues didn't sit well with Vermonters. When it came to his stance on climate change, healthcare reform, and even his controversial rhetoric on immigration, the state had no tolerance for it. But here's a little twist. Vermont has a reputation for independence, and its residents take that seriously. It's not about following the crowd. Vermonters want a president who shares their values, and Trump simply wasn't the man for the job. You'd think a small, predominantly white state would lean conservative, but instead, Vermont's progressive streak means that anything resembling Trump's divisive politics gets a swift rejection. Vermont's political landscape is clear. If you're not in line with their core values, you won't get their vote. Trump didn't just lose the state in 2020, he lost the heart of Vermont. Now that you've seen Vermont's take on Trump's presidency, you might wonder if any other state shares their level of resistance. Well, let's move on to a state that's also fed up, and that's where we're headed next. Don't forget to subscribe, because you won't believe what happens next in Illinois. What do you get when you combine a huge, diverse population, a powerful Democratic stronghold, and a total rejection of Trump's policies? Illinois. You'd be shocked to know just how firmly this state stands against him. From the bustling streets of Chicago to the quiet corners of the state, Trump's presidency was met with constant pushback. And guess what? The state's political landscape hasn't budged. In 2020, Illinois overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden, with a margin of over 17%, making it clear that Trump's policies just didn't resonate here. The state's urban centers, with their mix of blue-collar workers, college students, and professionals, saw massive opposition to Trump's immigration stance, handling of the economy, and environmental policies. But it's not just the cities that rejected Trump. Even in the more conservative rural areas, people began to turn on him as his tenure wore on. You'd be surprised to learn that despite the state's historical leanings toward the Democratic Party, Illinois once had a more mixed political makeup. However, Trump's rhetoric and actions pushed it further left, and even many Republicans in Illinois began distancing themselves from his influence. What's even more jaw-dropping? Illinois is home to some of the country's most influential unions, and guess what? Trump's antagonistic approach toward labor rights and his attempts to strip union protections only made Illinois voters more furious. The state's workers, many of whom were employed in industries that Trump promised to revive, felt betrayed. For them, Trump's empty promises to bring back manufacturing jobs didn't cut it. But here's where it gets really interesting. Chicago, Illinois' largest city, is often seen as the epicenter of anti-Trump sentiment. From protests to political rallies, the city's progressive vibe made it a symbol of resistance, and with Trump's policies targeting cities like Chicago on issues ranging from crime to immigration, it was clear that Illinois wouldn't tolerate his divisive brand of leadership. You won't find many Trump supporters in Illinois, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any area of the state where his policies weren't deeply opposed. Illinois' rejection of Trump wasn't just political, it was personal. People here weren't just upset, they were outraged. Now that you've seen Illinois, wait until you hear about the next state on the list. You're in for some serious surprises. And there you have it. 5 states that just couldn't stand Trump. From economic concerns to values-based rejections, these states made their voices heard loud and clear. You'd be shocked by how each one stood up for what they believe in, despite Trump's influence. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video to help us keep bringing you more shocking content like this. We've got even more insights coming your way. Stay tuned.